So I suppose today we're talking about the annoyance of true crime, essentially, Yaz. How do you feel, I suppose, to start with, as a criminologist or somebody into social science as a field, when you hear true crime?
It's an interesting one because, obviously people are really into it. It is a huge thing, like
Massive.
Podcasts, Netflix documentaries, like there's so much out there about true crime. Our students all listen to it. I, for one, I don't know about you, have never listened to anything true crime.
I don't listen to anything true crime. I suppose where my education came from at university, they were slanted on the popular things of true crime. So I saw it in modules and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the conception is, or the construction of criminology, is that everything's about murder and everything's about true stories, true crime. But for me, and I said this to our producer who found out how we feel about true crime, that all crime is true, none of it's made up. So where did this notion that true crime is murder come from, or serial killers? Yeah,
it's a weird one, and the fascination with it as well, and people really like taking in all of this true crime stuff and listening to it all the time. One of the students was saying she listens to it on her drive to school, uni, or school. That she listens to it, just going about her normal daily business, which interesting. But I just, as someone who's never listened to it, and as a criminologist who is, rightly interested in crime, it's a weird one to kind of see where the link is. But I think there's a misconception that actually what we do is deal with these types of crimes, which actually, for the most part, we're not so interested in them.
No, and they're rare occurrences.
That's the thing, isn't it?
We might see murders, obviously that happens, knife crime and etc. But serial killers and killing sprees in the UK.
Unusual.
Yes, to say the least. Yes.
And I think, it's that kind of nature-nurture argument. So a lot of what we look at in criminology is actually that nurture side. So we are looking at societal structures and the ways in which society works that potentially cause, environments where people maybe are more likely to commit crime. So things like poverty maybe make people more likely to commit crime. Poor schooling, all these different things might make people more likely to commit
bonds,
crime.
attachments,
all those different things. But then actually, I think that a lot of those serial killers and the things that they talk about on true crime they're the exceptions. They're the bad people. That
the
actually,
anomalies.
That actually we don't deal with so much.
No.
Some of them we might.
Yeah.
But it's not our area of...
It's not, is it? But it's fascinating. As soon as you say, I'll do a lecture, as an example, on serial killers, you'll get 100% attendance.
Oh, yeah.
Of course you will. There'll probably be people in there that aren't even on the course because they've got wind that there's a serial killer lecture going on. And it's the same with the true crime podcasts and news outlets or whatever else that focus on these things, especially those podcasts. They're actually saying they're not experts or not even in the working field. And so all they're doing is regurgitating news articles, old documentaries.
Wikipedia.
Essentially it's plagiarism, what they're doing. They're just reading out other stuff and claiming that this is them investigating, which they have no powers to do, and it happened about 45 years ago and all the rest of it. So I find it confusing in that sense. But I suppose, what is criminology to you then? Do you know what I mean? If it's not murder, the true crime, whatever true crime is, how much broader is this discipline that people don't realise?
It's very broad, really, isn't it? Because, there's a big argument about sociology and criminology, and I don't want to get into that. But I guess what we're looking at is society and the ways in which it reacts to criminal behaviour, but also the ways in which things have become criminal. It's all socially constructed. We've made the laws, not us specifically, but society has made the laws. We can change them. Things do change quite significantly sometimes for the better or worse. And the ways in which we function as a society and how that impacts human behaviour. And I guess there are lots and lots of things that potentially do make people more likely to commit crime, and that is what we are very interested in. Then also how we react to that. So things around punishment. What do the public think of punishment? What does the public think of prisons? All of these different things are really important to us. But it's actually quite a big question, isn't it?
No, it is. And like you said, things change, things adapt. And I think that's the privilege we're in with criminology, social science. I look when I started doing my degrees and stuff, about 2012 through to Masters 2015, everybody was talking about cybercrime, acid attacks, the clown phenomenon, all these things that were happening whilst we were students then became modules, then became research, then became areas of interest, sex work. We've spoke a bit around incels on previous episodes as well that are coming up, that all kind of align to those adaptations and changes. We've just launched environmental crime module. And again, our students, maybe this is more of a reflection on my descriptor, were like, why would you want to do a module about trees and grass and leaves and plants? And I was like,
I would love to do that module.
I mean, it'd be pretty interesting. But I was like, no, we're looking at organ trade and illegal mining and slavery and globalisation and serious and organised crime. And, we're looking at all these different things. And then all of a sudden the numbers boosted on the module. I changed the descriptor. But those initial conceptions are constantly kind of incorrect or kind of, on the surface with what we do. Whereas annoyingly, but also in a good way, we can rewrite our lectures every year.
definitely.
Change the cases, whatever else it might be. And I think a lot of people come into it with one mindset because of mainstream media and kind of just look at murderers, knives, guns, that kind of sensationalisation. So maybe it's where we've come from news-wise and what's being shown over the last 10, 15, 20 years, which has then led to people only wanting the really kind of underworld dark stuff, whereas, like you said, we're looking at people, everyday people. We're looking at harm reduction. We're looking at policy and how it hinders people, or it might have a racial slant on. We're looking at those different things, because again, students come in and go, when are we going to do this? When are we going to do that? And you're like, that's actually not really criminology. That's kind of glorified criminology that you've seen on Netflix, which might have drawn you here, which is great. Thanks, Netflix. You've made our degree really popular, but maybe for reasons that aren't really true.
And it's a tricky one to navigate with the students then, that actually maybe it doesn't look exactly how they thought it would. But, whenever I tell people that I do criminology at university, people always ask, and they're like, oh, wow, like CSI. And I'm like, no, nothing like CSI.
No, because that's forensics.
That is very different to what we do. And people are always like, oh, so when are we going to do profiling? And I'm like, well, never. I'm not entirely convinced by profiling in general. And also, it's not criminology.
No, it's true. And I think that's how we started this, really, wasn't it? We ended up coming in here many months ago and kind of just having that chat around what is criminology, what is crime, and how it kind of evolves and changes, and those conceptions, and also those conceptions then come from outside, and it's much broader. It crosses over different disciplines.
It does, and that's the thing. We can look. So as part of that thing of being able to look at how the laws are made and stuff, that we can look at things that, wider social harms. That aren't necessarily crime, but they do cause great harm to society. And actually, we have the scope to look at those. We have the tools to be able to research them, the critical thinking. And I think that's what we give our students, really, those critical thinking abilities, where actually they can look at the media that maybe interested them in the topic in the first place and be like, well, this really isn't representing the problem properly. Or
no, 100%. I think that's what drew me into it. All of a sudden I went and did sociology at A-level. We're going to look at why this film is filmed this way, and we're going to look at how these Disney characters are depicted, and we're going to look at how Superman or superheroes are always men, and what the dangers of those kind of things are. Do you know what I mean? So that's what drew me in. I was like, wow, that's really kind of different, and like you said, it's interdisciplinary as well. Policy comes into it, anthropology, economics, all these different avenues within social science, and more broadly is what makes kind of criminology, isn't it? Because like you said, people are like, oh, criminology, you're going to read my mind? No, I'm not psychic, and they don't exist anyway. But it seems to be a very one track with it, I suppose, from an outside-in perspective. And
I think, I don't know about you, but I feel like actually studying criminology and, being a criminologist, if that's what we'd call ourselves.
Yeah, I never would, but in here I would.
It makes me less fearful. I am generally unworried about crime.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. For someone whose house was, a couple of years ago burgled as well, generally relaxed about crime. And I feel like people are quite fearful, particularly at the moment. I feel like people often ask me, like, well, what about knife crime? What about these things? And they're worried. And I generally do not feel that. I don't know if that's just my very laid back nature or understanding what's happening. And
I think it's that.
Yeah.
We're reading stats, we're reading data all the time, and not like, crazy reading loads of data, but we put it into our slides, we put it into our lectures, we discuss it with students, we break it down. So I think, you've been lecturing longer than me, but I've been doing it about 10 years now. After 10 years of doing that, or 15, 20, whatever years, I think it does relax you, doesn't it? But again, you see that fear online, don't you?
Yes.
One of my students at a previous institute, she did a wonderful piece on parents' fear of crime by looking at Mumsnet and the blogs on Mumsnet, and really cool, did really great
cool,
content analysis, which I think a few of our students have done since as well.
Yeah.
And she said you can see them kind of setting each other off.
Yeah, the panic.
Yeah. One says something and everyone goes, oh my God, is that a thing? And how are we going to look after this? And it is a real kind of diluted world of fear there. But I think, again, media plays a role in that. Doesn't it? Everything that's produced in terms of film, not just essentially media reporting, has to be violent, has to have some kind of, sensationalization, big up some story, or kind of adapt something that was true into something much more exacerbated, which leaves us believing that's how the world is. Which, again, it creates false conceptions. So things like Luther, I love Luther, and it is a very good show, and very kind of cool bits in there with policing and stuff like that. But as an example, if you're older like us, you could say the Bill as well. It gives that perception, it gives that perception that crimes will be solved in half an hour. Yeah. And that police are constantly walking around in twos on the streets, finding clues every 5 minutes, which isn't true, is it?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, it'd be a great world, wouldn't it? If murder's happened, about 12 across London. Yeah, don't worry, I know who it is. It's him over there. So I think then it creates that as well. That, well, why aren't police doing anything as a separate point to what is crime and what is criminology? How do you see that? Do you see students or even people outside kind of having misconceptions because of that stuff?
100%, and just the general attitude that they are not doing enough, or that they're focusing on the wrong things, or the things I always see are that because of health and safety they can't do specific things. I don't know. I don't really understand that, but that's a lot of. I really shouldn't read Facebook comments at all, because honestly, it drives me to some kind of. Get really fed up with it.
Why? Why does that annoy you?
Just the real misunderstanding. It's always focusing on the wrong issues. I feel like yes, the police are underfunded. Yes, police officer numbers have been cut extensively. That isn't specific police officers' faults. Like, that is a wider issue that we are seeing over and over again, to do with funding, to do with lack of public funding,
lack of interest in being a police officer as well. Same with nurses in recent time, because of the news and media again. Yeah,
definitely. And why, I guess, when we see all that stuff in the news, why would people want to go into those careers? And particularly, when there was the awful case with Sarah Everard and the reporting from that around the Met Police, but the way in which that organisation was run and the reports on that since, who would want to put themselves into that kind of organisation?
No, it seems like you're putting yourself at risk, doesn't it, almost? And then again, I think to how young some of our students look when they go out into the police force, and they're trying to do their job, and they are good upstanding students. They've had 3-4 years in the degree. Most of them have been volunteering anyway, or working close to those sectors. And then you see those videos of them being kind of embarrassed. Oh, you look like a child. What are you going to do? You couldn't arrest me if I did anything. All those topics come into what we're talking about as well, when we're talking about what is crime, what is criminology. You mentioned at the beginning, everything, or a lot of people believe everything's just socially constructed. It's a lot of people lean that way for lots of kind of reasons, but there seems to be a lack of respect there, doesn't it, for the young ones trying to come through? And it must be horrible.
It must be. It must be. I mean, I think policing is a really tough career anyway. And obviously we do look at policing quite extensively, probably from a not individually critical critiquing like individual people, but just a more broadly kind of critical understanding of how the police function in society. and what kind of things they do for society, and the things they help with, and also the kind of things that they uphold. So we've spoken about like ethnic disparity in the system before, and obviously that starts at that level, but it goes right through, right the way up to the courts, right the way up to sentencing, into prisons, and these are all types of things that we can look at as well. And I find it really interesting. I love doing what we do and looking at all those different things. And being able to research and help, I think that's, some people think that we're just teachers.
Yeah, it's interesting, that, isn't it? Like, when I first started, I think my family struggled to grasp the concept I'm sitting at home and doing some research.
Yeah.
Well, you're not working. Well, no, I am. And this was pre-COVID, so it wasn't, it was unusual to be working at home 2-3 days a week. Anyway, and it really did stump a lot of people when you explain to them that I love lecturing, but it is probably 30-40% of the job if you broke it down, because the research, everything else that goes into it, we have to be active in our field. Or I believe, whatever your field is as a lecturer, you should be knocking around in it or doing research in it, whatever else in between, if it's production, if it's music, whatever. People should be kind of aware of those fields they're in.
Definitely.
And I think that's how we can create great new stuff every year, We've just thrown out the environmental crime module, which is going great after a couple of years. We've had a probation module come in a few years before that as well, kind of showing those different avenues as you work through the degree. Because, of course, at the beginning, it's more broad and generic, should we say.
Thinking about crime.
Yeah, thinking about crime. We want you to discuss and explore.
Things like gender and crime, all these different ideas, But
as we move through, you've got a great youth justice module, the serious and organised crime that's run by one of our colleagues, which is great as well. And all of a sudden you see the students come alive, don't you? And go, this is criminology.
This is
Forget
great.
murderers. I want to listen to stuff about cartels and, whatever else in between. And they do really kind of... throughout the degree understand that, don't they? And kind of that idea of let's just talk about serial killers for 3 years kind of diminishes in a good way. And you really see them find a passion in criminology or social science, which they then manoeuvre down, which I really enjoy seeing.
Me too.
In that sense.
And my first thing because I run the dissertation modules, both of them, my first thing when I stand up and I say to them, now please, can't we not do any dissertations on serial killers this year? Because they are... you can't get that criminological discussion in. Because what are you discussing?
And as a supervisor...
You're just describing what happened.
Of course. And as a supervisor, you want your students to find something new. You want them to have something that looks good on their application for a job if they're going into that field. If you're going to become a detective on serial killers, then be my guest and write a dissertation on them. But if you want to work in rehabilitation or prison or whatever else, the advice out there, honestly, is to... write something on that, so you go into that field with 10-20,000 words of knowledge. And
there are so many interesting things, so many niche little topics on all those things that you could write a really good dissertation on. What
are some of the new things you've seen pop up, since we're always evolving? What are some of the new topics you've seen this year?
I was mentioning earlier that I had a really interesting one on vigilantism and vigilantes with like paedophiles,
paedophile hunters,
that kind of thing. And there's been quite a lot on social media about it, like them going to people's doors and knocking on them, and how kind of terrifying that is in one way, but also that actually this has resulted in some police action against people as well.
I mean, they go there with what seems like evidence and chats and things, don't they? They're not just turning up knocking on doors on hearsay or conspiracy theories.
There's always some interesting ones on football.
There is, isn't there?
I really, the whole kind of football research area is really interesting. So I had a couple on football this year, I think.
Wicked.
What about you?
I think incels has popped up the last couple of years. I've had stuff on housing transgender prisoners, which is quite very new.
Topical,
do you know what I mean? I think, that's been some interesting topics, looking at their safety, their kind of dignity, all those things. I've got a good one at the minute as well, looking at the glamorous lifestyle of social media and how that can lead to criminality, misidentity. That's quite cool. They're always kind of changing. If I'd have said 5 years ago, there probably would have been a lot more around cyber stuff. Those kind of things, racism. Because I suppose as well, unfortunately, with criminology and social science and this whole trending culture that we have, things come and go very quickly, which is the sad side of it, I suppose. You know, people change their Facebook picture or put a little post out or tell someone they've seen a documentary on something and they feel sad about those people, but nobody becomes true advocates for them in the long run. I don't know how you feel about...
I guess, you know, the research still exists. It's still out there. But how much is actually accessed, and we do move quite quickly through. But then I guess there are certain academics who do really focus on their topic. And I feel like I've somewhat moved away from my original research. I mean, I would still do research on restorative justice. But it's not my main area anymore. No. I'm much more interested in children and young people. And, you know, their kind of experience with the justice system. But the research is there. Someone's done it. Someone cares.
Someone cares.
But there's so much to look at, isn't there? There's so much. You know, I'm quite an empath, and like, you know, I really struggle sometimes with reading all this stuff and looking at it all, and I take it on board, and I can be quite upset about stuff as well. So sometimes you do have to like take a step back.
I think that's a big thing, isn't it? As well, it's an emotive degree. You know, sometimes they look at you and go, "It's going to be this bleak for the next 2 hours, mate."
It is. Sometimes I feel like apologise. Sometimes I do apologise. My master's module, every week I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is not a happy module.
But I suppose Crim in one aspect isn't very, you know, smiley, is it? And we can't avoid those topics as we move through the degree. Obviously, we don't throw them in at first year as soon as they turn up and scare our young budding criminologists. But as you move through the degree, it does become more emotive, which I suppose unintentionally makes it a reflective degree.
Definitely, And I think you can't do criminology without considering where you are in society, who you are, your upbringing. You know, your kind of, I guess people are a bit funny about the word privilege, but your privilege in the world.
I suppose your reflexivity, how you fit and who you are.
Positionality, all that stuff, that you can't do criminology without that. I remember once reading an article by Tim Newburn.
Of course.
You know,
Classic.
I think it was in The Guardian, and he was talking about universities, and there'd been some criticism of universities calling them very like left-leaning or lecturers.
You hear it loads, don't you?
But he was writing specifically as a criminologist, saying, if you are doing criminology, if you are a criminology lecturer, if you deal with the data, if you understand it, then really there's no other option but to be left-leaning, because you're reading all this stuff that, you know, is showing one way that the world works, and that actually it's impossible to look at that and not feel like moved by the links between things like poverty and crime and all those things.
And we're advocates for our areas of research, or more broadly, you know, people and spaces. So to not be that way inclined when you're looking at liberating people,
it would be strange.
Yeah, it would be very strange. You'd be a very different criminologist if it was, they've done that, they should be in prison, let's not look at the root cause, it's their fault. It wouldn't be criminology.
No, but I suppose, you know, when we look at some of the older criminological literature, we see that broken windows, stuff like that we can see that very punitive, harsh treatment of people.
Do you want to explain what broken windows is, just in case anyone's like, who's broken some windows?
So broken windows is a theory from James Kelling, was that his name?
Wilson and Keeling, I think
Wilson,
so.
So his idea was essentially that in an area where, for example, someone has broken some windows, that this will eventually lead to the overall decay of that area, and that we should be really strict. So we should have zero tolerance on things like minor antisocial behaviour in order to stop the eventual kind of downfall of that area, that it would fall into misrepair.
That's the punitive side of it. I suppose visually a lot of people now are going to be going, I can see that.
Yeah.
I went to a uni house and it was already a mess when I turned up, so we destroyed it even more. We didn't care for it. You know, people will say they can see that working, but from the aspect you're talking about, it's how it can marginalise communities. Yeah,
100%. And how ultimately, great, you're going to put them in prison for doing very minor things, fine. But what's going to happen then?
Yeah.
Like, what does that do? It costs a lot to put someone in prison.
It does.
And to have people out of prison, you know, ultimately we know if someone's been in prison, a lot of them are going to reoffend, and they're going to end up back in prison because we don't have adequate support for people who leave prisons. And it's just a really kind of vicious circle. I guess what we as criminologists do, we are not excusing people for committing crime, even when we can see that, they do have certain things that make them more likely to commit crime. It's not an excuse, but also what is best for society in dealing with these things. What is the point in locking someone up and throwing away the key, which you hear a lot of?
Yes.
And realistically, we have a very high prison population, so there's 88,000 people in prison at the moment.
One of the biggest in the West.
So we have a high prison population, and the vast majority of those offenders are not dangerous offenders. So it just begs the question, what are we doing? Why are we spending so much money imprisoning those people? Yeah. And we know so many of them are going to reoffend, 40%?
Yeah, especially in the first 12 months. It's very bleak because of the lack of access to services.
Housing's a big thing.
We've got an episode coming up with a guest, and she speaks around those things around housing and support and kind of in-reach that she's been doing, and how loads of them get kicked out of their houses or they can't find one in the first place.
Not being able to find one is huge.
Then I suppose it goes back to that original point. It's seen as a government issue or criminal justice issue, whatever you want to kind of shape it as, but is it actually a societal issue? Isn't how the prisons are a reflection of how we are, and all those classic statements that you hear, so if prison's getting worse and living's getting worse, then isn't it us as society that should maybe take some more ownership, responsibility, understanding as community members to support?
Yeah, I think in general in the UK we do have or we can be quite individualistic and thinking, well, if I can't get that, why should other people get that?
Yeah.
But ultimately, if it's about making society a nicer place, isn't it? And I guess when we often in criminology we'll look towards Norway and
always. I think I mention Scandinavia every other day.
I know. I think the students are like, oh, here they go again. And I guess it's the prison system is very different. A lot of stuff is very different. But also the system is very different. They're not so individually minded.
Yes.
The society is set up much more for well-being.
Their economy is much stronger.
Yes, always helpful, isn't it? But work-life balance, all these different things. It's much more set up so that not as many people fall through those cracks, whereas maybe it's a bit different here.
And I think, again, social construction, their values, their beliefs, these people need supporting.
Yeah, collectivism, understanding that we are a society and that actually if the most vulnerable members of society are doing well, we are all thriving.
Yes.
And things like huge disparities between the highest earners and the lowest earners make those things much worse.
Yeah, 100%.
And we are all not thriving there.
No, exactly. And I think, Norway, Scandinavia, whatever, does come up a lot. And there are some high-profile cases there that have been handled very differently to ones that are similar here. And you see a lack of engagement with criminality out there after, like you said, they offer so much more support for their young offenders. I think you can take optional counselling up until the age of 25, and that's up to you as the offender, not the government or welfare state or whoever else it might be out there. That's up to you if you need that. Imagine something like that here.
Just that the support is available, that someone cares. And you're not being forced into doing anything.
Exactly.
Just that you've got that there.
Yeah, and they do wonderful programmes, agriculture, take them out before they're due for release. Lots of different kind of ways in the world that do work, but yet we don't adopt them.
No.
Even as something as simple as in Brazil, if you read a book and write a book report about that book, you get time knocked off your sentence.
Really?
Because you've read a book. Yeah. And you're doing a report, so you're educating yourself and developing your skills, so you can get a bit of time knocked off. Right, fantastic. What an incentive.
Yeah.
I can't read, no, but you might get a couple of months knocked off. I'll try then.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I was just thinking when you said that about reading ability in prison, we know it's actually incredibly low.
Yeah, I think it's around 70% are really struggling with the skills past level 2.
Yeah, so actually, because I remember we had a charity in once who teach prisoners to read.
Oh, okay, cool.
And they were saying that actually it can often lead to loads of incidents as well, because if someone goes and they're like, can you sign this? Can you just read that and do this? But if they can't read, the prison officers were saying that they're much more likely to just kick off because they don't want to show weakness or vulnerability or whatever they think, how they perceive not being able to read. So they'll just...
I suppose it's embarrassment is what we would say, isn't it? Like when you ask people, can you ride a bike? And they're like over the age of 15. And they're like, no. Because in society, society says you should have obtained that skill by now.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a friend, and every time we mention bikes, we're 34, he's still like, well, I can't ride a bike.
My mum can't ride a bike.
Yeah, and it's like you should be able to do that because society says so. It creates an embarrassment, which is then, I suppose, frustration.
Yeah.
Within those worlds, and it can't be easy in that sense. But lots of different topics.
And I think the one thing that we haven't touched on, that I feel like we should,
Go on.
is that actually we also look at victims.
Yes.
Like we also very much deal with how victims move through the system, how they experience victimization, the way that they feel about their victimization, who's more likely to be victims.
Yes.
You know, all of these different things that we do look at.
The big thing about that is that we find victims don't really have a voice in the system.
No, not at all.
You know, and when you say this to the students or highlight, you know, how poor the victim personal statement is and all these things, they're like, oh my God. And then you say to them, well, if you've ever been to court as a victim, when do you get your chance to be heard? Bar a piece of paper that's written out for you. There isn't much there for them.
Yeah.
And then maybe there isn't much faith to report things then because of that. And again, going back to that, you have to victimise yourself again and relive those experiences. That is something that's really lacking, isn't it?
Yeah,
for
definitely.
those people.
You know, victims are witnesses.
Yeah.
And they are witnesses, but also they are treated as such.
Yes.
And we can have these victim impact statements and all these different things. But realistically, when we look at the statistics, victims are incredibly unhappy with the way in which they move through the system.
Yeah.
They're treated quite poorly.
Yeah.
And it's awful, really. And what's the point then?
Yeah.
What is the point of having this really punitive system if actually victims are coming out of it? It's not justice because they're not happy. Not that they will be happy, but
no, I know what you mean.
That they don't feel like justice has been done.
Yeah.
There's quite a discord between like being, you know, going to court and going through that whole process, which can be really awful, and then someone going to prison. But actually, that doesn't make the individual.
No.
It might make them feel, you know, if it was a violent crime or something, they might momentarily feel safer. But realistically, it doesn't heal any of that.
No, and I suppose it goes back to that kind of question or debate around, are we too focused on punishment over those true causes of the crime? You know, and if we look at schooling and education, if something wrong happens in a school, 2 kids, 3 kids messing around or whatever, we're just focused on, you've done wrong, you apologise, everything's okay. That's not really... I know that's how we're constructed in the criminal justice, but it doesn't solve anything.
No.
You know, you're just looking to point the finger, essentially, because it looks good for public relations. Oh, we found this person, it must be them, or whoever else in between, or we're going to highlight this person as a potential. But like he says, it doesn't give any closure to the community, to the victims, to the family of the victims, depending on how high profile and violent the case is. You know, and for the offender's family, they get a lot of stick, you know, and they have to live with also kind of being labelled as the offender because you raised them, or how could you have created something like that, going back to that nature nurture at the beginning, and then you see it come full circle, and it's much bigger than 2 people, should we say, on the surface of a typical crime between 2 people.
Crime is really harmful for society.
Yeah.
It really impacts communities. When we have like high profile, like, you know, we've had a couple of stabbings in Wolverhampton, and they really impact a lot of people. It is really distressing.
It is.
And the courts, obviously, they are doing the best they can to deal with it. It's not a criticism of them, but actually just the way in which we deal with these things. And again, back to Facebook comments, people are always like, oh, you know, we need harder deterrence. We need this, we need that.
Yeah.
But does deterrence work?
It doesn't work, does it? No. And we've seen it with things like prohibition or whatever. You just push it underground. Yeah. You know, you want to make raves illegal with the Public Order Act back in the day with Mr. Michael Howard. That's who it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And what happens? Well, they just go further away from you. Yeah. People want to express themselves, and it seems that historically, when you look at social science or criminology, it's about halting expression, freedom, individuality. You know, we look
particularly when it comes to young people.
Exactly. Yeah, we look at cultural crim. You know, is it crime that is cultural, or is it culture that is being labelled as crime?
As crime,
yeah. You know, like the hugger hoodie and all those kind of things would come into that graffiti, and you know, we kind of pump into our students that express yourself. Always question, you know, and it's great when they come here and they can go through those things, but it's not really taught in lower level schools.
No,
you know, social science for me should be everywhere.
Yeah.
From kind of schooling all the way through.
100%.
Why is that person homeless? Instead of just looking at them and judging them. And, the first thing we say to our students is, this is a non-judgmental degree.
Yeah.
You're not here to fixate on certain genders, classes, races,
No.
whatever, religion, beliefs, whatever it might be. You're here to understand. And open up, like you said, we develop those critical skills with them. Instead of listening to one news report, go to the next. How true is that data? How good is that new piece of legislation? Has it led to more convictions? We get them to look into those things that are kind of maybe away from mainstream media or on the surface of those medias, which I think for them in this time as well is a fantastic.
So important.
Yeah.
So important. I feel like that was something my parents were really good at for me.
Yeah.
Was teaching me to be really critical from quite a young age. Not critical.
No, but question, explore.
Yeah. Just trying to think about when people are telling me things. Why are they telling me that? What does it mean? Is it true? Would they have a reason to tell me things on a certain slant?
Yeah.
All these different things.
Yeah.
And I think even things as simple as understanding very basic statistics and how easy it is to manipulate people with statistics.
Yeah.
This crime has risen by 100%, but it's gone from 2 crimes to 4 crimes. It's so easy to make things look so awful when actually... I'm not saying things are amazing, but they're also not as bad as the media would have us believe.
And the data goes the other way as well, doesn't it? I remember when I first started doing all this, and then the legalisation thing happened in Portugal, the decriminalisation of substances, and all my mates were like, "Well, crime's gone down in Portugal." It's like, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Half of it's just stopped existing.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone down, hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just not recorded in the data anymore.
Yeah.
Same as when same-sex marriage was legalised. Of course, crime went down according to those historical constructions.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing about it being a social construct, isn't it? That actually things that we do see as criminal at one time aren't at other times. That is going to really impact the way in which we collect data and view it, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. Honestly, I think it's really cool. But I'll probably finish off and round off with one last question of, where do you think the future is in crim? What's the next hot topic going to be? What are we going to be talking about in the next few years?
Oh, I'm thinking probably something to do with AI.
Oh, yes, 100%.
But I don't know what as of yet.
I think intellectual property, who owns what, who's created what.
Yeah.
Because technically, I think the thing with AI is people are using it and going, it's a piece of software or whatever, but it's a living entity.
Yeah.
So you're actually outsourcing your labour.
Yeah.
So you're not. It's like asking me to give you answers to your assignment.
Yeah,
It's exactly the same thing, except for he'll come up with it quicker. But so it's all those, and you see things online now, don't you, that your future doctors are going to be trained by ChatGTP.
Yeah, and I've seen like illustrators like really panicking, saying this is it, like our jobs are done, because people are showing them how to literally go onto it and type in what they want and get this picture.
There was a guy the other day won a photography contest, and it was AI, and he did it deliberately to prove a point.
No.
And he was like, "This is made up."
And that is, to me, it feels. I know people love AI.
Yeah.
But
There's the environmental side to it as well.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Half a litre of water per request.
Every time you ask something. Yeah. And I think environmental stuff will continue to dominate criminology and become more so, because up until quite recently it's been kind of on the fringes. But now I think as certain resources become more scarce and the way in which the world works has to change, I think we will be following that quite closely.
Yeah, because they fought for land, they fought for space.
It's going to be water.
It is going to be water.
Resources.
Yeah, it is.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I try not to think about it too much.
No, but it popped up in the environmental crime module recently that'll be the next fight on people's hands, unfortunately.
Which is awful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no. Thank you very much for today, Yaz.
You're very welcome.
It's been a very good chat around what is crime, what is criminology, because most people think it can be one or two. It can be one or two ways, and we're detectives that solve everything in half an hour. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that, and thank everybody for listening. And we'll catch you again soon. Yeah.